Thanks for attending this session on NSX Next Security, NSX Next Generation Data Center Security. It's good to see so many people. I know that Joe he threw the ball up on the subject, so you're all very familiar on the subject now. So let's start by iterating a few things. So if you missed any of Joe's good slides. First, a few words about me. My name is Christian von Starfeld. I have a master's degree in electronic engineering from the University of DTU. Being an electronic engineer, I'm a little concerned about all this software-defined networking and data centering talk that's going around, but I think we'll manage. I'm also a little excited about it. Then I have 5 years of operational responsibility from the Danish Defend, where I was the main architect for the network and also on the security side. So I am the guy with the tin-foil hat, which Joe talked about. After I left the Defense, I've been a year and a half as a solution architect at Credocom, where my main responsibility areas are network and security, and also delivery, which is our name for the virtualization process. So, to getting to it, the NSX for VMware. What is it? I don't know if you all got Joe's view on what is actually involved with the NSX. The NSX is actually a lot of different components actually, which all ties into network virtualization. In the lower left corner here, I have noted some of the functions which actually comes embedded with the NSX. Some of them are actually very exciting, I think. Especially this talk will be about security, but there's also a lot of module in there which is actually not directly security related, but nonetheless is actually very interesting. Joe talked about distributed routing, distributed switching. These I think is very interesting, and also the API and the partner ecosystem is very key. But talking about every one of these subjects in itself we could fill the entire day with that. So we'll just narrow it down and look at the security perspective. The NSX architecture in itself, because you have to just understand briefly what it actually is. That, as Joe also said, what it does, it creates this overlayer, networking overlayer on top of each host. This, in the terminology in NSX, it's they call it vWires, and it's actually the VXLANs. So when you're talking NSX switching here, where your virtual machines are connected into, you don't talk VLANs as we normally would in a networking world. You're just saying this is connected to this vWire or this segment ID in the VXLAN. Then you have a concept which is called the NSX gateway, which is actually where we connect to the physical world. It's very key also, as Joe also said, to note that this is on any network hardware. So we're actually diminishing the network department role in this, because they only have to provide a fabric actually, and perhaps some of the responsibility and delegation if you wanted to include some of the routing and the routing modules. It's also there's also load balancing involved and other things. It actually has quite an extensive feature set. Yeah. Then there's then they have this notion of the NSX controller. The NSX controller is actually the part which actually programs it's not a vSwitch, but it is still the underlying layer, the distributed switch underneath. And this is also where they have made it possible for other vendors to integrate into through an API solution. This, as Joe said, if you cannot, you may not have the philosopher's stone yourself, but someone else may have them. So by making this integration possible, it's possible to actually obtain a lot of other feature sets which was not originally intended in the product. They work on these different categories of third-party enablements, where application delivery, that will be the load balancer. I will not discuss that. And there's the network gateway services. Again, this is a router or something else. I will not go into that either. And then there's the two security services areas, which this session is about. There is these are the VMware NSX partners in the ecosystem at the moment. Note that we have security services, which has McAfee, Symantec, Trend Micro, and Rapid7 as official partners, and then we have network security platform, which has Palo Alto Networks as a partner. The differences between the two is that the security services is actually standalone services, meaning that the McAfee will provide you with an IDS, IPS capability, or may antiviruses as well, but only that part. So it will be able to, in a distributed way, scan, for example, for antiviruses, which makes it very nice. The network security platform is more comprehensive because this is actually a full featured set of services. So it will include both an IPS and IDS and AV, but it will also give application visibility into and provide what is called the next generation security. So there is this differences in feature set which you should be aware of. So what is next generation security? Well, in the old days, and I kind of like the way Joe addressed it by having this retrospective and evolutionary view of it. A good old stateful inspection firewall is what we all has come to love or hate, depending on view. It's actually a technology which was first invented in the beginning of the 90s and really hasn't evolved since then. So the trouble is that it doesn't really provide you that much security anymore, because if you open up port 80, for example, or port 25, or what it may be, applications are often written in order to work for the users. So they will tend to use ports which developers know are open normally in a firewall. So in the old days, port 25 would equal, this is mail, but it's really not the case anymore. So it's important to make this distinction that ports no longer really equals application. And IPs are not necessarily what we think they are. So we need some more granularity, and we need some more visibility into what is actually going on, because what we really want is perhaps to stop mail. And by only shutting down port 25, this may not be the resulting effect. They may be using 2525, or they may be using port 80. It could be anything. So we need to see what's really going on. And this is actually, in a nutshell, what this next generation security thought is all about. It's divided into three categories. Well, the first one is actually what's known as the app ID. The app ID is this notion that you do no longer necessarily think that because it's port 80, it's web traffic. We are doing it in a different approach, where we actually take a bit stream pattern recognition mechanism and actually look deep inspection packet of everything. So it's kind of like the same that an antivirus would do by looking at signature matching. So you do a signature base, and based on that, you categorize traffic as this is SharePoint servers, this is a SQL server, this is something else. It could be Dropbox, it could be anything actually. But the important thing to note that is it's a signature match, and it's no longer just based on the IP packet header. So with that in place, we also want to know a little more of the context in which we see the traffic. Which users are actually the ones requesting a SQL traffic? So by utilizing AD integration or other kinds of user integrations, we can actually map IP addresses to users and make rules, security rules, based on this. So that could be it could also be a service account, for instance, that this has the privilege to access this server, but only if it's logged in with the service account. If it's logged in with something else, it won't have that permission. So this is very relevant both in the data center, but also at the perimeter, where you can say that, for instance, the marketing department may use Facebook while the IT department must not, for example. or something else. Then to top it off, you also have the content ID. The content ID is, well, it's kind of similar to the app ID because it's also signature based. But what this does is actually it provides DLP functionalities by looking at specific regex that you can define yourself, or it matches up against a known antivirus signature base, or it could match up against an IPS signature base. So it's kind of like you already have the engine underneath to do this signature matching. Which base of signatures you're actually matching on is actually what gives the different capabilities on the platform. So, in a nutshell, that is what is meant by next generation security. So it's somewhat more granularity and somewhat more insightful than the old stateful inspection firewall. So here I just took a random example of an application where I went to the TechNet, where I showed that if you wanted to enable a link in your data center for north-southbound traffic, meaning going in and outside the data center, and east and westbound, you need to open these ports, all these ports, which more or less is everything, because there's a lot of like big ranges in there also. So because you need a whole lot of different configuration, it gives a high probability for configuration errors. It also actually gives a very low degree of security, because when you're opening all the ports, it's more or less, it's more half open than half closed. So what tends to happen is that it's only in the north-south direction that people actually implement security, because perhaps I cannot open these ports inside my east-west traffic because I have no firewall in place for it, or simply because it's too tedious to implement. And then you just say, well, heck with it. I'll trust it if it's inside the data center. From a security tinfoil perspective, that's not a very good approach. Then I have some security, some customer challenges that we see at customers at the moment. They are in no particular order, but they're all very relevant. This one talks about the difficulty about securing selected services inside your data center environment. And what is often done is, if you want to secure it and you have a security department which demand that you secure it, the only option you really have is to put these servers in different VLANs and in different IP ranges in order to be able to redirect it outside of the box, so to speak. And this leads to poor performance because you have to go a long way, and it also requires a lot of configuration because now you have to both involve the network and the security part of the infrastructure, and not only the VM infrastructure. I tried to illustrate it with this drawing here. I must give illustration credit to a blogger on VMware called Brad Hedlund. He made the drawings. You don't pay attention to the fact that it says Cisco because it could be any fabric. But what's interesting in this is without the NSX. If you wanted to have this east-west insight into what's going on, then you would have to go outside of the box, go up to the firewall, and go in. And clearly up here you will see that you'll get a very nasty bottleneck actually, and it will scale very poorly because whenever you buy new hosts, this will not be able to be upgraded as such. By going to an NSX, as Joe also said, then you're able to actually put the firewall into a distributed load, so you will spin up the firewall appliance on the host itself, and the workload will be on that host alone. It also gives you fewer hubs actually. In this case, where you only have a single host, it will actually be no hub at all. So you get the full functionality and you will satisfy security requirements, but you would only have a very, very short way to go. And this is just the multi-host part. Note that up here now we have the routing capabilities. Here, actually, because we use the VXLAN and the VTEP, the virtual termination endpoints, these will be able to speak directly to each other, provided, of course, that they have a non-continuous VLAN. it will actually work over non-contiguous layer-free networks. So you could have a data center somewhere with a whole different IP scope and a new data center another place, and actually create these V-wires across. This is also a very nice feature, actually. So yeah, yes, yeah, it's just illustrated as a web server, and this could be a SQL server or something else. What a security guy often says is that if you're able to compromise a web host or SQL server, then by not having this in place or this in place, you can go horizontally from an attacker perspective, and you can compromise hosts in this direction, which is again very bad, because you will have no insight into what's going on. Another customer challenge that we see is that it's kind of hard to maintain consistency across the security. If you have point appliances for, say, you have an IPS sensor, you have an antivirus, you have perhaps some endpoint protection also, this will not scale as well administratively, because you will have different consoles for each device. It will, from a security perspective, be, if everything was configured perfectly, it would be great. However, it tends to lack this correlation between events, and it doesn't have the opportunity to use the symbiotic effects that there is by having it consolidated on a single platform. So if you have all your security on the same platform with the same administrative view, it's more easy to deploy security, actually, and also to do forensics on it afterwards. Yeah, here I just mentioned a few products that people use in order to try to streamline the security deployments to see if it's compliant or not. It doesn't really provide additional security. It's more of auditing of the security rules. So my take on it is it may be a little not worth the effort. Another challenge is this operational gap between the security department, which Joe very well spoke of. This notion that whenever you want to have an IP address, you have to go to the networking department or a VLAN or deliver your firstborn in form of a trunk, or and this takes time, and it makes deployment takes longer than it necessarily should. But what's important to understand is, and coming from more of this side over here than this side over here, is that the server admins also have a responsibility. Yes, it's very nice from the server admins that we want to deploy applications fast. We want to spin up a server as fast as possible. But the security admins and their responsibility to their peers also is also a valid point, and should not just be overlooked as a hindrance, because yeah, it is time consuming and it's a little tedious from time to time, but it is also, at least from the security and networking perspective, it keeps the uptime at a higher level, because it also prevents bad things from happening to the servers. So this is just like a reminder that don't shoot the networking guys. We're good guys too, and we just have other mindset and other responsibilities. Yeah, I listed up a typical provisioning sequence, how it could be for a server. Of course, this will vary greatly from organization to organization, because it depends on if the VM administrator is also the one who does the networking. It's kind of easy to get the trunk out of him. If it's very separated, just by floors in the same building, you'll end up what Joe talked about, with it taking weeks or months. And if you have an ITIL system in place as well, which probably some of you know, just creating a ticket to get a VLAN somewhere before you can do something, it's very stressful, actually. And if you're very unlucky, it doesn't provide you the opportunity to do parallel tasks. Then everything will be SQL, and then you will really note that this will be the case. The zero up there is actually a reference to this ITIL process, that the documentation work in order to actually getting permission to do something is actually often much longer than actually doing it. But still, it's kind of important, because we shouldn't forget that before everything was virtualized, the first step actually with provisioning hardware was actually the one which took quite a while, because getting the physical boxes and installing it and plugging it in and everything actually took quite a while. So yeah, the IP addresses in the VLANs, that would typically be the networking department, and then you would deploy the application, and then you would have to go to the security department and ask, okay, let's create these rules so it will actually work, and then someone will verify connectivity and proper access to the server. And there could be multiple steps down here, verifying these and verifying that, but the takeaway on it is just that when there are more than one stakeholder involved in the process, it will take more time. If we can automate the process, it would become much more flexible, much easier, and much faster. I have Jack. Okay. Now how it's done with the NSX and the Palo Alto system. The Palo Alto system has a panorama, which is the management platform, and that is both a hardware appliance, and you can get it as a software appliance. So it is actually fitting into the software-defined data center, as Joe said. But what it starts as actually, it ties into the NSX service, the fabric, and registers it as a service. And what happens then when the infrastructure admin over here wants to provision a server? What happens is that the NSX will deploy a VM series, which is actually a VM appliance. So it will spin up a VM on the given host, so it will not need to travel further than necessary. Then it will enforce the hypervisor rule, which is actually it will tell the hypervisor which flows do I want to catch and redirect through the new firewall inside. So it will actually become a bump in the wire on this vWire you have in place. Then the VM NSX will push to the panorama the tags which the infrastructure admins have put in. So when you deploy a server, you will tell through the NSX, you will tell the NSX that this is a SQL server. And then the security admins will beforehand already have put some rule set down on it. This is the typical rule set for a SQL server. So it will push to the panorama that now I have deployed a new SQL server, and it has this and this IP and this, that, and there. Yeah, and then the panorama will push actually the firewall rules down to the VM series. But it will not only push the rules down here, it will also push the rules out to any physical appliance that you may have. If you had, for instance, a perimeter firewall, it will also push the rules out there. So you would have consistency across your entire security network infrastructure. Yeah, this is an example of it. What happens in the NSX Manager is that it actually maintains a list of what has been provisioned. So, for instance, here you have 3 different SharePoint servers, and they have been associated with an IP address, and the NSX knows that. This is pushed to the panorama, where it is referenced with this tag here called the container, but it is a tag. And then your security admins will just make rules based on this security tag actually. And then they will dynamically update with whatever IP addresses is coming in and pushing these firewall rules down to the firewall. So in essence, it will create, or you could create, a security policy then, which says using the user ID that the all employees AD group, they may access all IPs contained in the SharePoint container. And then you could build on top of that and say it must only be the application which is known as SharePoint and not everything else. In that way you would actually have created a fairly strict rule set, but also a fairly strict rule set which would actually work and would actually be updated in real time. So it is actually a very convenient and actually a very nice way to do it. Of course, this mostly applies when you have like predefined roles of servers you want to. If you wanted to deploy a whole new kind of server, you will still have to go to the security admins and say what rules should be in place for this. But most typically, you would have a standard role for something. Then there's the custom challenge store. And I know I said that that all the challenges are created equal, but I kind of think that this one is one of the bigger ones. The fact that you cannot see at all what is going on between virtual host inside a unit inside a physical host. It's kind of frustrating because how do you know it's working? Well, yeah, does it come up? Does it speak correctly? Well, you may have an understanding of the application, but if you cannot see if it's communicating right because all the components are inside this black box, well, then you actually have a problem. And given that so many virtual machines can now be pushed into the same host, it's actually very likely that most of the components is contained within. So, visibility, yeah. It's important for everyone, not only for server admin. Of course, it's important for a server admin because if you wanted to migrate a certain SQL server, well, then you wanted to migrate it off the host, you'll probably have to go tell the networking team that now I'm doing this very, very highly loaded SQL server at another place, and they will probably have to count into the network infrastructure that now this server, it could be a server which requires a lot of backup or something like that. They may want to know this and see how much load are you actually putting on the network. You could get this visibility, for instance. It could also be the application developers. As I said, that if all the components are inside, it's hard to know that if it's behaving wrongly. What we often see with customers is that application is doing like really, really many, like in the million classes of like HTTP unauthorized because someone has typed in the wrong password somewhere in the code. Or it could be something else. It could also just be, we're seeing like tens of thousands of sessions between servers inside a host, even though it should only have a few. So this kind of visibility is very key, I think. Audits and controllers they're kind of a little out of scope, but they also kind of like the inside. They just don't have it yet, so they can't really ask for it. So it's important to know what's really going on inside your infrastructure. Here I just took actually a random example from a Palo Alto data center firewall. It is actually some real life traffic. So here you can see that a given server or some servers, this is aggregated here. Say the entire infrastructure within here uses that amount of gigabytes of NFS traffic. For instance, if I were to click on that, I could see which servers it's actually using and how much and who are they talking to. So I could say, okay, it's this server and it's talking very, very much to this server, but it doesn't make sense because it shouldn't. Oh, and then I need to find out why it's doing this. So it's a very easy way to look for malpractice, if you will. The ones where we can spot like configuration errors or potentially malicious behavior is by looking at this column over here, which is the threat column. The threat column is an umbrella for the IDS, the IPS, and the AV signatures. And the IPS signature will trigger, for instance, if it could be an unauthorized attempt to access a CIFS share, something. And most often, luckily, it's not malicious, but it is because someone has configured something wrong. And what tends to happen is that a Windows server will try a few times, given a very long timeout, and then it will try something else at the end. And the application will often wait until this timeout happens. So it will actually respond in very poor user experiences. So, but you can catch this unwanted behavior because it also fires an IPS signature, which you have because, and then you can correlate it with the application recognition over here. So you can say, oh, it's by NFS and it's this and this and these servers. So if it were a user, coming from the outside of the data center but going into the data center, you would also see that it's this user because it's tied to the AD, which then again goes into the logs and say this IP is this user. So you can say, oh, it's Mick from marketing again. Always good. And you can also, if you wanted, actually another funny thing with this one, which I actually addressed with the customer, was that they have a lot of Dropbox. Going from the server segment, there was a little, I don't know who installed the Dropbox on the servers, but it wasn't according to policy at least. And then you can drill also down, take some like scheduled reports, so you can group and you can do stuff if you wanted to. I think this is from. This is actually perimeter. A perimeter firewall. You could use the same as a perimeter firewall by pulling it all into the data center, but it wouldn't be the normal use case for it. But it has the same functionality and feature set the data center firewall as a perimeter firewall would have. Here's a very nice slide again by Mr. Bradley, where this problem is kind of illustrated, where you can see you have the north-south bound, and now I introduced another NSX component actually, which is the NSX Edge, which has the firewall load balancing capability, also some routing. But if you wanted to have all this visibility into the network as it is today, you would have to have an inspection firewall up here, which of course would have to have application recognition, and then you would have to go in and you would have to go all the way down to the web tier, and then all the way back up again to the firewall, and down to the SQL, possible SQL server over here, and then you would have to go all the way back again through the load balancer and out the north-south way. Going with NSX, it becomes much more simple. Again, this of course utilizes the other components as well with the distributed routing and distributed switching, but also of course with the security in place. So you can see if you just count by hubs, it's a 13-wire hub versus a 7-wire hub. But what's very important, I think, is also to note this again, as it was before, becomes a bottleneck because you will have one aggregated point in your network where all traffic will be flowing through. This architecture down here will scale out much more efficiently. Again, ignore that it says Cisco all over the place. It is vendor agnostic down there. There is actually, even though he said that the software-defined data center doesn't have any hardware requirements, I think it's truth with a modification, because there is actually hardware vendors who have the possibility of actually terminating the VTEPs. Not all have that, so otherwise you will have to terminate it down here and then force it out. By having it in the hardware, you could stop it right there. So, but that's a minor question. So where Palo Alto is at the moment actually is, as most of you probably know, the NSX is actually not available for download or testing. Kind of the same thing with the Palo Alto platform, but not quite. We are currently at what is called the version 5, and they have this VM series actually. So you can do all these good things I've just been talking about, but you won't have the NSX integration because the NSX is not out yet. And the NSX integration is first available in version 6. The version 6, which is running in my cupboard at home, is currently in beta and is scheduled for arrival in January. So I believe that this will actually beat the NSX to market. So it should be there when NSX is available. But it is already available over here as an appliance, a virtual appliance, and then you can do your routing inside it or whatever you want to do. But it's not NSX integrated in version 5. So what I want like to say is, the key takeaways from this session is that what I think is important with the NSX and the next generation firewalling technology is you gain this visibility into the east-west traffic, this notion of what is going on. You also get actually this granularity and protection of the region, because as soon as you can see the things and you can identify what it is and what it does, well, then you're also able to do policy based on it. So it's actually a very, very strong tool. Then there's this ease of deployment. This is very much targeted to the NSX and the way that you can do this tagging and directly mapping it over to the management platform, which then again will push the configuration automatically down to the security appliances. Yeah, and then of course the whole notion of consolidated security through a platform and not in form of point devices. To have this consolidated view where you can say antiviruses is great, but I only want to have it scanned for these applications. That wasn't the most obvious case, but you could get the DLP, for instance. Say, I only want DLP, I don't want to see anything leaving my infrastructure with the word confidential in it through mail. This correlation that you can actually both use the application recognition and what security features that you want to push on top of it is actually also very key. And it also makes the afterwards log digging and forensics much more easy, because you will have both who was it who were logged on that machine at that time. You don't have to dig back and find out which DHCP IP address was at the moment given to a user. And the quality of the logs is much better. So hopefully I did a little of the why, a little of the how. The when is mostly, I think, up to when the NSX is really released. But there must be some VM representative here at somewhere who can tell you more of that. Well, but hopefully I did answer a few questions on NSX and next generation security. Hopefully I also did raise a few. If you have any good questions, you should come see us. I'm standing at booth number 3, down at the hall A. Yeah, down with all the other ones. So, and if you want to know more, I can highly recommend this one up here. Actually, it's a very intuitive walkthrough through all the different components, and not only the security components, but also how the virtual routing is working, how the virtual distributed switch is working. And this is very good stuff. These other ones are also, this one of course is very good if you want to know more about the Palo Alto security solution. Well, thanks for your time.